You've probably
Hmm.
assumed airlines are just greedy, that the $49 flight becomes a $312 checkout because they're squeezing you for every last dollar they can get. That's what everyone thinks. And it's wrong. The real reason isn't greed. It's not even really about you. It's about a single algorithm you've probably never thought twice about. The one running inside Google Flights, Skyscanner, and every other site you use to compare prices. And once you understand how that algorithm actually works, you'll never look at a starting from $49 flight the same way again. Here's the thing nobody tells you. Airlines aren't hiding fees because they think you won't notice. They're hiding fees because of math. Cold, mechanical, algorithmic math. And unless you've actually worked in airline pricing or revenue management, you've probably never heard how deliberately this system was built, which is exactly why it works so well. So let's start with the part that made this whole thing possible. Rewind to May of 2008. American Airlines does something nobody had ever done on a mass scale. They announce a $25 fee just to check a bag. At the time, this seemed insane, outrageous even. Checking a bag was just part of flying. Within months, every major US carrier copied it. And that one $25 fee cracked open a door that airlines have been walking through ever since. Because here's what airlines figured out. The moment you split your ticket into a base fare, plus a pile of optional extras, you unlock something incredibly powerful. You get to advertise the smallest possible number while still collecting close to the same amount of money, sometimes more, by the time the customer actually finishes checkout. This is called unbundling. And it didn't stay small. In 2025, airlines worldwide are projected to collect $157 billion in fees like baggage, extra legroom, and seat selection alone, more than double what they made in ancillary fees back in 2016. Let that sink in. That's not the ticket price. That's just the extras. $157 billion, roughly the entire GDP of a country like Ukraine, made purely off add-ons that used to be free. But here's the twist that makes this story actually interesting. And it's the part that flips the whole airlines are scamming you narrative on its head. The total cost of flying has actually dropped by roughly 40% since 2016, even accounting for all these new fees. So somehow, airlines are making more money in fees than ever before, while you're paying less overall than you were a decade ago. How does that even work? The answer is the algorithm. Meet Sarah. Sarah wants to fly from Chicago to Denver. She opens Google Flights, and the algorithm does exactly one job. It sorts every airline by the displayed price. Cheapest first. It doesn't care about baggage. It doesn't care about seat selection. It doesn't care about leg room. It cares about one number, and that number determines who wins Sarah's click. So imagine two airlines. Airline A prices its ticket at $180, fully bundled. Bag included, seat included, everything included. Airline B prices its ticket at $49 and then charges separately for the bag, the seat, and anything else Sarah wants. Even if Sarah ends up spending $160 total on Airline B, once she adds a bag and picks a seat, Airline B still won by winning the algorithm. Airline A never even got the click. This is the search engine trap, and it's the actual reason budget carriers unbundle everything down to the last inch of legroom. Not because they're evil, but because the algorithm rewards whoever posts the lowest headline number, and once one airline plays this game, everyone else is forced to play too. Or they disappear from the top of the results entirely. This is what economists would call a race to the bottom. Except the bottom here isn't quality, it's just the displayed price. The actual experience, the actual total cost, barely factors into where you land in that search list. Here's where it gets even more interesting because the fees themselves aren't randomly chosen. Airlines have found something almost counterintuitive about human psychology when it comes to travel spending. Passengers are extremely sensitive to the base ticket price, but barely sensitive at all to the price of specific comfort add-ons once they've already committed to buying, which means you'll spend 20 minutes comparing $10 differences in base fares across 5 different sites. But once you're already checked out mentally and just trying to finish the booking, you'll click yes on a $35 seat upgrade without blinking. That gap between what you'll fight over and what you'll casually accept is exactly where airlines make their margin. So this isn't a scam in the traditional sense. It's something closer to a controlled experiment airlines have run on millions of travelers for over a decade, and the results tell them exactly which fees to charge and exactly how much resistance each one will get. Baggage, it turns out, is one of the biggest levers of all. Baggage fees alone make up more than one-third of all the ancillary revenue airlines collect worldwide. But it's not just about bags anymore, because here's the part that shows you how far this has evolved. In 2023, for the first time ever, United Airlines made more money from seat selection fees than it did from baggage fees, pulling in $1.3 billion just from people paying to pick their seat. Think about that. Choosing where you sit, something that used to just happen automatically when you checked in, is now a bigger revenue stream than checking a suitcase. We've established that airlines make billions off bags and seats, but here's where the story stops being about baggage fees and becomes something much bigger. Because this isn't just a story about airlines, it's a story about the entire structure of the airline business and why they need these fees to survive in the first place. Because here's a number that will genuinely surprise you. Despite pulling in over $1 trillion in total revenue in 2025, the global airline industry keeps a net profit margin of just 3.9%, which works out to $7.90 in actual profit per passenger. Not per flight, per passenger. One industry analyst put it perfectly. Apple makes more money selling a single iPhone case than an airline makes flying you across the country. So when you're annoyed about a $35 seat fee, you're not looking at pure greed. You're looking at an industry running on margins so thin that airlines have almost no room for error. Fuel alone eats up around a third of every dollar they bring in. And when your entire profit on a passenger is smaller than the cost of a fast food meal, ancillary fees stop being a nice bonus and start being the difference between profit and bankruptcy. And this is exactly why the model keeps expanding. It's not stopping at bags and seats. Ultra-low-cost carriers have taken this furthest. Frontier Airlines now generates 62% of its total revenue from ancillary fees, the first time any airline has crossed that threshold, while Spirit Airlines sits at nearly 59%. Read that again. For airlines like Frontier, the ticket you bought isn't really the product anymore. It's the hook. More than half of what you'll actually pay comes after you've already clicked buy. And it's not staying confined to budget carriers either. In January 2026, Southwest Airlines, and the company that spent 50 years building its entire brand around bags fly free, quietly ended that policy and started charging for checked bags and assigned seating. The last holdout in the industry just joined everyone else. When even the company whose entire identity was built on not charging fees eventually charges fees, that tells you this isn't a marketing strategy anymore. It's the business model, industry-wide, no exceptions. But it doesn't stop at seats and bags either, because there's a third piece to this that most people never even think about. Airlines' single largest source of ancillary income for major U.S. carriers like Delta, American, and United actually comes from selling frequent flyer miles to credit card companies for co-branded rewards cards. Every time you swipe a Delta Amex or a United credit card and earn miles, the credit card company is buying those miles from the airline in bulk for cash. Your points aren't a gift. They're a product the airline already sold once to a bank before you ever redeemed a single one. So the real structure of a modern airline looks nothing like what you'd assume from the outside. It's not just fly planes, sell seats. It's a three-layer business. Sell the cheapest possible seat to win the algorithm, sell you everything around that seat once you're already committed, and sell your loyalty data and mileage behavior to AK Bank on the side. The plane is almost incidental to how the money actually moves. And here's why this matters far beyond just annoying you at checkout. Because this exact same unbundling logic, cheap headline price, expensive add-ons, has quietly spread into nearly every industry you interact with. Streaming services strip out features into separate tiers. Software companies sell you the starter plan and gate every useful feature behind an upgrade. Even your grocery delivery app shows you a low subtotal and then stacks service fees, delivery fees, and small order fees once you're already deep into checkout. Airlines didn't just pioneer a pricing trick, they pioneered the exact playbook that most of the digital economy now runs. And this is where it gets personal, because if you've ever wondered why your bill for basically anything, flights, food delivery, streaming, even your phone plan, always ends up higher than the number that got you to click in the first place. You're not imagining it. You are the product of an algorithm that was never optimized to show you the true cost of anything. It was optimized to win your click at the lowest possible number and extract the real value from you afterward, once you were already invested in finishing the transaction. So the next time you see a flight advertised at $49, understand what you're actually looking at. You're not looking at the price of a flight. You're looking at the output of a decade-long industry-wide arms race to win a search algorithm. An arms race that requires airlines to survive on margins thinner than a fast food dollar menu, which forces them to make up the difference through seat fees, bag fees, and selling your loyalty data to a bank. None of that shows up in the number you first see. All of it shows up by the time you hit purchase. And this is exactly why traditional travel media doesn't cover it this way. Airlines are greedy is a headline. Airlines operate on a 3.9% margin and are structurally forced into ancillary revenue to survive, which is why the checkout price and the search price will never match. Again, that doesn't fit in a tweet. It requires you to actually sit with the mechanism instead of just being angry at it. So the next time you book a flight and feel that slow creep of fees stacking up at checkout, you're not being scammed by one greedy company. You're watching the exact same rational mechanical response to an algorithm that every airline and increasingly every business online has been forced to adopt just to survive. The $49 was never a lie. It just was never the answer to the question you thought you were asking.